This is the location of the former concentration camp at Sachsenburg. This is one of the very first camps, and it is important as being the camp where many future SS criminals learned the ropes. All future camps were to a large extent based on what the SS learned here. Possibly because the camp was closed so early and was then used for industrial purposes, a great deal of it has survived. It is located on the river Zschopau to the northeast of Chemnitz. On a rocky outcrop above the camp is Sachsenburg Castle, which dominates the skyline. The video you can see here of the area was taken in the autumn. However, do not be fooled by how attractive the location looks today. In 1933, it was a place of terror. In this video, I shall look at the very first camp leader, Max Hähnel, his background and career. As it was to happen, he was very different from nearly all the other camp commandants. As always, I am looking here at real history. I have read that Max Hähnel, as an SA leader, was killed in the Night of the Long Lives. That is not true, and in this video I shall go as far as to show you his death certificate. Max Hähnel was born on the 14th of July 1897 in Freiburg, the third child of Karl Emmy Hähnel, who worked for the local train company in their fire prevention team. Freiburg lies on the northern slope of the Ore Mountains, so named because of its association with mining and metallurgy. By the time Max Hähnel came into the world, the association with silver, zinc, lead and tin was one that had lasted for 700 years. As a youth, Hähnel was a member of the Wandervogel movement, young people who enjoyed contact with nature and long hikes in the outdoors, to which the Ore Mountains offers plentyfold. However, speaking during the National Socialist period, he also said that he considered himself to be an anti-Semite at this time. He was 17 years old when the First World War broke out. He volunteered for the military in September 1914. The following month saw him in Flanders, where he was wounded for the first time in November 1914, which was serious enough to have him sent to a hospital. On release from hospital, he was sent back to the Western Front. In 1917, his unit was redeployed to the Eastern Front, to Galicia, and from there he was sent to the Balkans. It was in the Balkans, in Macedonia, that he was promoted to Vice Sergeant, that is to say, in German, Vicefeldwebel. That is the next rank up from corporal. On the 19th of September 1918, he was seriously wounded by a gunshot wound to the chin and neck. This almost killed him. A comrade said that he was awarded the Iron Cross for the action when he was wounded. However, nothing appears to have been put down in writing, or if it was, then it was lost in the confusion at the end of the war. This was to have serious consequences for Hähnel 16 years later, although, as we shall see, it might also have saved his life. Hähnel spent a long time in hospital. He was released from military service on the 19th of September 1919. Then he went back to school. After he received his abitur, he went to work for the civil service. In 1920, Hähnel was appointed as an official in the Reich Finance Administration. He completed his training as a tax official in the Zschopau tax office, where he remained for the next 13 years. He would have witnessed the events of the 29th of October 1923, when the German army was ordered by emergency decree from the Reich President Friedrich Ebert of the SPD to put down a left-wing coalition government including Social Democrats and Communists in Saxony. This photograph from that day in Freiburg recalls those events. However, this was also an exciting time to be in Zschopau. In 1918, the engineer Hugo Rupper made a toy with an internal combustion engine. This further developed into an auxiliary bicycle engine and culminated in the start of mass production of motorcycles in 1922. By 1928, the Zschopau Motorwerken JS Ramussen, with its DKW brand, was the largest motorcycle factory in the world. Kurt Lasch was a senior tax inspector in Chemnitz. He was 11 years older than Hähnel, having been born on the 29th of March 1886, and had worked in the tax office since November 1919. He was also the person who founded the SA group in Chemnitz on the 1st of September 1925. In November 1929, he was a city councillor and faction leader of the National Socialist German Workers' Party in the Chemnitz City Council. In June 1930, he was granted leave from the Reich Finance Administration. It was he who persuaded Hähnel to join the National Socialist German Workers' Party, membership number 302613, on the 1st of September 1930, and the SA in the same year. Perhaps due to his friendship with Lasch, Hähnel advanced quickly in the Sturmabteilung. In January 1932, he became a squad leader in Sturmbahn 3182, and in July 1932, Sturmführer. After being appointed Sturmbannführer in October 1932, he finally took over as leader of the Floa Standarte 182 at the end of 1932 in the town of Floa, which is to the east of Chemnitz. On the 30th of January 1933, in an effort to hide up the scandal of the finances involved in the Eastern Aid Scheme, conservatives around President Paul von Hindenburg persuaded him to appoint Hitler as Chancellor. Thanks to legal manipulations that followed the Reichstag fire decree and the sham election of the 5th of March 1933, Hitler was able to secure his position and effectively to seize power through the use of brute violence. As far as Hähnel was concerned, he was able to secure the role of commissioner in the Floa district administration. In this role, he pushed for the coordination of the existing administration with the new rulers. As an SA leader, he was hired as an auxiliary policeman. He may also have headed the Plaue concentration camp. The Plaue concentration camp was the first concentration camp of the National Socialist regime in the Free State of Saxony. It was set up on the 9th of March 1933 in a gymnasium in Plaue. In the days following the Reichstag election of the 5th of March 1933, there were numerous arrests of political opponents of the National Socialists. The prisons of Oderan and Augustusburg were so overcrowded that there was no more room for any new prisoners. Within 1 month, the gymnasium held 170 prisoners, mainly socialists and communists. They were forced to do agricultural work outside the camp whilst being harassed and humiliated. The guards found it particularly amusing to cut swastikas or stripes in the prisoner's hair with garden shears. One of the prisoners was Rudolf Mette, political leader of the Communist Party's sub-district of Floa. On the 5th of April 1933, an appeal appeared in the Floa Tageblatt newspaper, in which Mette declared his resignation from the Communist Party and called on all communists and communist voters to renounce the party. We can only imagine the suffering that he must have gone through to make this statement. However, this was within Hähnel's ideology to convert former communists and make this conversion public in order to convince others. Some 600 people passed through the Plaue concentration camp. The camp was closed on the 10th of June 1933. At the time of the closure, 37 prisoners were still in Plaue. They were transferred to the nearby camps at Kolditz, Augustusburg Castle and Sachsenburg. Hähnel was involved in the planning of the Sachsenburg concentration camp from the very beginning, and in April 1933 he was appointed head of it. Not only as a newly appointed Standartenführer did he enjoy the trust of the regional SA and Nazi party, and as a long-standing tax official he was considered an administrative expert. Like Kurt Lasch before him, he was granted leave from Reich service for his work as concentration camp director. Note that he was called a director and not a commandant. The commandants will come later, and they were members of the SS. The location of the Sachsenburg concentration camp was a weaving mill which had not been used as such for 3 years. The Great Depression had made it surplus to requirements, and the owners agreed with the Saxon authorities to rent a villa which had previously been where the business owner had lived, as well as granting them the free use of the former production facilities, provided that all the costs were paid. This was a win-win situation for both sides. The National Socialist authorities got premises almost free of charge in which to keep their enemies, whilst the business owner did not have the burden of paying the property tax on the building. The first prisoners arrived on the 2nd of May 1933. Their job was to prepare the camp to receive more prisoners. They were accommodated in Sachsenburg Castle high above the Zschopau River, and each day they descended the steps to the factory. Their job there was to dismantle and remove the machinery, as well as to make bunk beds for the prisoners. By the middle of that month, more prisoners had arrived, and they were quartered in the factory building, which had now become a concentration camp which could hold up to 2,000 prisoners. The guarding of the prisoners was carried out by the Floor SA Standard 182, which was subordinate to Hähnel and was by then classified as an auxiliary police force. To no small degree, Nazi terror had been enforced in granting SA units, effectively gangs of street thugs, the right to be auxiliary policemen. Hähnel had a service apartment in the former factory owner's villa, which was located at the edge of the concentration camp grounds, whilst his men were quartered in the mill building. There is no known prisoner report that Hähnel personally used violence in Sachsenburg, or, for that matter, ordered others to use violence. Within the SA, he was accused of not being tough enough towards prisoners. Hähnel himself declared in July 1933 that after the onslaught had ended, he refused to allow defenceless prisoners to be beaten and mistreated in a sometimes brutal manner without any deeper reason. Amongst the SA and SS, this was a very unusual approach. However, he could not be on the spot all the time. Violence was part of the National Socialist system, and after years of street battles with communists, the SA guards profited from Hähnel's absence to mistreat their prisoners. Hähnel believed that he could win over political opponents to National Socialism through educational work and a policy of reconciliation. He relied on training, lectures, and used former communists to persuade their once fellow party members to go over to the Nazis. This worked in the case of the former communist functionaries Walter Otto and Fritz Dassecker, who declared their support for National Socialism in a pamphlet which they dedicated to 5 Sachsenburg SA leaders, most notably Hähnel. Hähnel was, however, subject to mood swings, and prisoners didn't know if he would be friendly towards them or if he would be aggressive, as he could lose his temper for no reason and shout and threaten the prisoners. In April 1934, Standartenführer Hähnel was removed from his position as head of the Sachsenburg concentration camp, allegedly for wearing medals he had not been awarded. This was a result of an internal dispute within the SA, and those who didn't like him referred to his not being awarded the Iron Cross in 1918. However, this might have had a positive effect for Hähnel. Hähnel was not at Sachsenburg when the Night of the Long Knives occurred, although he probably was too little involved in the power struggles to have been affected by it. The end of June 1934 found him on holiday at Lake Constance, out of the way of the massacre of the SA leaders. However, he was later asked if he might like to resign from the SA, which he did in early 1935. This seems to have made him somewhat bitter. After complaining in a restaurant about the Nazi government's treatment of old fighters of the movement, Hähnel was arrested in March 1935. The former camp director was himself now placed in protective custody for 3 months. After his expulsion from the SA, Hähnel returned to his old job as a tax official, working in a tax office in Dresden. At the end of 1936, he married and had 2 daughters and a son, born in 1938, 39 and 1942. One of the daughters died in infancy. From the beginning of 1936, Hähnel fought against the expulsion from the Nazi Party. In October 1937, the Supreme Party Court ruled in his favour. At that time, Hähnel was employed as a tax officer in Frankfurt am Main, where he took on NSDAP functions. In 1940, Hähnel was readmitted to the SA. Now aged 43, Hähnel was drafted into the Wehrmacht in 1940. He was promoted to first lieutenant in May 1941. As in World War I, he had various postings which took him to Norway, Poland, Estonia and Ukraine. He must have participated in the long retreat from the east. On the 8th of May 1945, as the world crashed down, he was in Písek in Czechoslovakia. Here he was taken prisoner by the Red Army. In August 1945, he was taken via various camps to prisoner of war camp 148/5 in Novorossiysk on the Black Sea. There he became seriously ill and was transferred to the special hospital number 5459 in Chotorok in December 1945. Hähnel died there on the 25th of January 1946 and was buried in the hospital cemetery. This is his death certificate. As always, I like to suggest that people actually visit the places I'm talking about. Indeed, I see what I do as tourism in some way. At Sachsenburg, there's plans to start the museum and to make it much more documented for visitors. But for the moment, there's a really good display here showing original photographs with explanations. At the moment, okay, it's all in German, but you will find as you go outside that there are English translations for everything as well, explaining indeed how the growth of these concentration camps, which we can see here on this map, we've got Prussia in white, rest of Germany grey and darker grey foreign countries. You will notice that they're concentrated in Saxony and in Prussia, and there are of course very clear reasons for that. So we do have photographs, and indeed this is Sachsenburg, despite the fact there's very little known about it. This is not because of a lack of documentary evidence for once, it's awaiting work to be actually done. If there's any one lesson that one can take from a place like this, it is that it's the terror of the dictatorship which allowed this to happen. And I think, if anything, something like this is to remind us of what can happen. So, for the moment from me, I hope you found that interesting. I upload every Tuesday and every Friday at 2000 hours my time. I live in Poland and in Germany, and so you get lots of material like this, original material, but at the same time you will find out what these locations look like today. So, thanks for watching, and all the best from me in Sachsenburg.